Welcome to another episode of Shift Talk. I'm Adam Raymond and I'm joined by Holly Pennington, our co-host. And today we have Sytease Geib with us. And she is incredible. We met her at the Manufacturing Institute. We had an event in Charlotte, which is where we're sitting. And we got to meet her there while she was presenting. She did a great job. But before I ramble on too long about her, I'll give a quick intro.
Yes.
She's a strategic workforce development leader, which I want to find out more about what that means.
Fancy, super fancy.
Very
Ooh, yeah.
fancy. She has actually a really cool background, especially working with active military veterans and how to incorporate them in today's modern workforce. So we're going to be getting into that, along with all the cool things about the Manufacturing Institute and manufacturing in general. Why don't I stop talking and say, Tease, you can tell us more about yourself, how you got to what you're doing, what it is you're doing now. Go for it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm excited to just share a little bit more about what we do and some of the exciting things that we've been able to work on at the Manufacturing Institute. But yeah, I think the journey that got me here today is a long one. And so I'll try to give you the Cliff Note version. But I graduated college right as the recession was hitting full swing, and that was fun. It really gave me an opportunity to just pivot and really rethink, like, how do I want to experience life? What problems do I want to solve? And it really led me to really wanting to help people. I saw firsthand a lot of individuals that were a decade or two older than me, more mid to end career, that were losing their jobs overnight. And it built within me a desire to help people find their path, because really a good job can change your life. It's everything that you need to provide for your family. And we tie so much of our own worth, what we're capable of, to that job. And so that led me into workforce development. I started out as a recruiter, and I actually had an opportunity to recruit for a lot of manufacturers at the time. They weren't hiring permanently because the workforce was so volatile, the economy was so volatile, and so they were really relying on temps. And so that was my first taste of manufacturing. And then fast forward, as a result of the recession, my husband actually enlisted into the Army. And so that took us to Washington State, where he had a unique opportunity to join Special Forces. And we were rare in the sense that we never had to move. And so we had the kind of stability in that state that most military spouses do not get. And so that really allowed me to really explore and build a true career there, aligned with what I felt was so important, and that remained workforce development. And so I, being an unemployed military spouse, was going to all the resource fairs, trying to get connected, because I had no network when I arrived. And I found myself at an apprenticeship hiring event, which was totally not what I was exactly looking for. I was in a pencil skirt and stilettos with a bunch of pipe fitter guys and bucket trucks, and stuck out like a sore thumb. But
Yeah.
graciously, there was a great woman there who's still a great friend of mine today, who said, "You look like you're in the wrong spot." And I'm like, what? How could you tell? She was working at a local chamber that became my place of employment for those 10 years. And it was a fantastic journey, but it was working on a small grant to help military spouses find employment. And with my recruiter background and networking, that was just a right fit at the right time. And that grew into a very large multi-million dollar workforce development division, which allowed me to develop some really innovative military transition programs at Joint Base Lewis McChord with a team alongside our Workforce Development Council there. And so my piece was always really creating and building that bridge between the business community and our military community, and really helping business understand the skilled talent pipeline and the value proposition that our servicemen and women bring to the table post transition. And so that was a really fun time, and I enjoyed it very much. I learned a lot. We had an opportunity to serve over 1,000 service members over
Wow.
the 5 to 6 years that was running there. And then during my husband relocated, he got out of the military, he transitioned himself. So I was working in military transition, I was living military transition.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it gave me a whole different perspective. I knew the struggle. I would hear the struggle. I would sit alongside, talk them through that, and I would use all my connections. But seeing it on the other side, seeing my husband go through it, seeing quiet things that most of them would never say to me in a room, what my husband was thinking and feeling, that fear, that worry for someone who was trained. He has millions of dollars of training, 2 advanced degrees, and still feeling like what he brought to the table wasn't good enough in a civilian context. And for me, that just lit a fire. And so I took a little break from working in the military community for a bit, did some other workforce development programming, started up my own strategic consulting organization focused on workforce development. And when this opportunity with the Manufacturing Institute, I was approached for that, I knew I had to take it, because what they were doing to support the service member and to really get at what some of the biggest challenges are in military transition, which is that lack of standardized way to translate military skills and align that to industry. I was like, this is what I needed. I needed all of those years ago to really better help support our service members. And so I knew I had to be a part of it. So I jumped on it. And that's how I got here today.
That's awesome. And I love like the story that you go through. And it's almost like every job and every opportunity leads to the next thing. It's like that stepping stone. So thank you so much for kind of narrating that for us. That's awesome.
It did have some winding roads in between, but I left those out.
That's life. That's life.
Yeah.
And it's also a Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
Speaking of going back to military, and you mentioned like creating the bridge between vets and employers. Can you describe a little bit more about what that looks like and your advice?
Yeah, military installations make up a huge part of communities of states. They, not just at a square footage standpoint, but they're really a community. They're very often one of the largest employers. Even though they're employed federally, there are a lot of supporting infrastructure and businesses that are created to really help support the influx of that population and community, not to mention the infrastructure needed in our schools, our roads, and things like that. And so they're a huge asset to a community as well. There's a lot of economic buying power that our service members bring to the table when they are relocating, and they're a part of our community. But there's a gate there, and it requires a special ID to get in, or a visitor's pass, which sometimes is not that easy to get. You have to be sponsored to get on. And what that means is our business community, unless they are a defense manufacturer, they're like working closely with the military, they're really not a part of that community, and they don't really understand and know the day-to-day of what is happening on that installation or what those service members are doing on and off base professionally. And so there's really just a lack of awareness and knowledge and exposure. And so what I really tried to do is, especially when we had so many transitioning from Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington during that 2013 to 2017 timeframe, we wanted to try to maintain those individuals because we wanted to keep them in our community. We knew they were very skilled and talented, but our business community didn't really know what the skills were, what their day jobs looked like, what units we had. And so I really tried to educate the business community, one, on just how many were getting out, what they were looking for, what their experience and training looked like, and then really helping them understand how they could connect. We did hiring events, networking events, just things that got business onto the installation so that they could begin seeing firsthand what it was like for our servicemen and women and how they could possibly see them fitting into their workplace when they were available. And so it started off with really just truly more awareness, more meet and greets. And then we really got into what does it mean to actually hire a service member? How do you think about how their skills might align, even though their titles and their training is in language that you don't necessarily understand or know how to equate. And it was a lot of manual work and very relationship dependent, which works when you're in one place. But when you think about how you scale, that becomes very challenging.
Yeah, and especially because a lot of military jobs, like they could be classified. So it's like, how do you bridge the gap between, okay, what their skill set is in that job to another one, especially in manufacturing? I would imagine that would be a challenge.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there's a huge Intel hub there, huge soft hub at Joint Base Lewis McChord. And that was a real challenge. It was my husband's biggest challenge as well, because so much of what he did, he could not put on paper or speak about. And how do you make it seem like it's meaningful enough with details, but also not going too far?
Exactly.
Yeah, we heard that a lot during the Manufacturing Institute event itself. There was a lot of conversation about companies trying to figure out how to rework their job descriptions. And even putting aside military experience, they were realizing how much specificity they were putting into the job description that was scaring off a lot of potential, very good potential applicants. And then you add military experience onto that, and all of a sudden you really almost need a translator in some sense to help people understand, okay, this is what they were doing in the regiment. This is what they were trained on. That translates really well to XYZ within your facility. How do you help bridge that gap?
Yeah. So that has honestly been one of the biggest struggles. And we've gotten as far as we can with those, like they call them MOC or MOS crosswalks, which is a military occupation specialty or occupational code that's available on ONET. You can crosswalk your military title to like an equivalent civilian title. And that's the best that we had for a long time. And the challenge in that is it really only worked for those closely aligned occupations. So you were a mechanic in the army,
I
you
was
can
going
be
to
a
say
mechanic out
mechanic.
here, you're a truck
Right.
driver. Congrats, you could be a truck driver.
Yeah.
And so it's not overly, I'm simplifying it, but not by much. And that works for those that, again, have a closely aligned equivalency. Those also tend to be the ones that don't struggle all that much during the transition process. But so many are getting out for a variety of reasons. And sometimes it's because they don't want to keep doing that exact same thing, or maybe
Exactly.
due to an injury, they can't continue to do that same
Right.
thing, or they want to continue progressing and they want a better work-life balance. And so what those crosswalks have done a disservice in is really failing to capture the transferable skills, the fundamental foundational skills, and the aptitude that they have to do something adjacent to that. And that's really where the burden was put back on the service member to say, explain to me what you did and how it fits into my context. Just like the business community had no idea, because again, they can't get on the installation. Service
Right.
members aren't going up to a business and saying, tell me about your job. Tell me, what does that look like? What are your skills? There's that wall there, that lack of communication. And so they really don't know what they're trying to translate into and what that looks like in a civilian context. And there's research online that can be done, but that only takes you so far. And so that has historically been a big challenge. And then when they don't translate it perfectly, you have your recruitment team, a frontline recruiter who may have little to no experience in the military, trying to figure out what an 88 mic is or what a battalion commander does. And
Yep.
they have no idea. And again,
Mhm.
Google only scratches the surface of what that is and doesn't necessarily break it down to a skill level. And so what I've really seen with the prevalence of more of the skills first movement, especially when it comes to recruitment and talent management, which is really thinking about what are the fundamental skills needed to perform this role with excellence, regardless of how long and where you acquired those skills. And so, really working with employers to think through, rather than requiring 5 years of production experience on a manufacturing floor, what are the actual skills that they need to do that work that would be bundled up into the 5 years? Because realistically, you're unable to tap into a very relevant pipeline of our transitioning service members and our veteran community if they're not coming directly from a manufacturing role. And so, really just shifting our mindset a bit on what are those skills? What necessitates the need for the number of years of experience? Is there wiggle room like that? And so, it's flipping hiring and talent management upside down to really think, what do we need for this job? And we know with technology advancements, especially AI, the skills that we need for so many jobs are changing faster than we can acquire them.
Right.
And that requires our hiring systems to remain nimble, our job descriptions and the way that we're evaluating talent to be more nimble. And so there's a huge opportunity within this skills first movement to really help business better capture and understand the skilled talent coming out of the military. When we can get rid of those titles, we can get rid of that experience level and break it down to the skills and start aligning on skills. And so I'm so excited about this moment in time that we're in, because I've really seen a huge shift in how that's working. And I'm really excited for that to continue.
I feel like that's what I heard the most. So Adam mentioned this earlier. We met at the Manufacturing Workforce Summit back in October, and you were up there on the stage doing your thing and whatnot. And yeah, skills first movement definitely stood out as a main topic. I'm curious, looking back at that experience, what did you hear the most that would be beneficial for someone listening to this that they should know about what's the future of this workforce in specifically
Yeah.
manufacturing? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, for one thing, hiring based on skills is not new. We've recycled it and made it look shiny by giving it a fancier name, skills
Okay.
first movement. But we've always hired for skills, but maybe it wasn't necessarily in every aspect of what we do, and it wasn't cemented throughout the process. It might not have been in our job descriptions and job postings as much as it was maybe in like a training and career pathway development plan. And so it's really an opportunity to look more holistically at your workforce and talent development and management strategy and think, what are the skills that we really need to do this job well? And is that explicitly called out in this job announcement? Or am I just listing tasks and
Mm,
hoping that I get someone with this exact experience rather than thinking, what are the fundamental skills that we need? How do we hire someone with that aptitude and potential and then mold them into what we need? Because the
mm,
reality is, this is not the recession. We no longer have a ton of talent in the marketplace that's ready to just step right into roles. We have incredible workforce programming, incredible education programming, but it's only going to take people so far. And that's where we have to have industry coming alongside and training up what you need. And with this skills movement, one, manufacturers have done this for a long time. They've had to be nimble, they've had to be innovative because with automation and everything that manufacturing as an industry has gone through over the last decades, they've had to be on the cutting edge, they've had to adapt.
right.
But we also tend to fall back into sort of what are those proxies for skills? What are those filtering mechanisms that we can do to whittle the applicant pool from the 100 that
Right.
we get to 3 that we need? And that's good when, it's an employer market. But when talent is tight and it's more of a job seeker market, you got to open up
Hmm.
those filters. You got to take off those parameters. You really have to think creatively, what are the skills I need? What can I train well here? And what do I need someone to already have? And so the skills first movement is just an opportunity to go back and audit. Where are the opportunities to maybe break this down or reduce the requirements of this role? Because that's not something that we really need today. Or now I need to update this because we're using AI differently on the floor. And so it's really giving industry and employers an opportunity to look back through all of their hiring practices and really shift that to more of a skills focus, a skills lens, and then think creatively around what pathways might someone have taken to acquire those skills and getting outside of the box. If it has to be this specific certification or this specific degree, how could they have acquired this through military service, through apprenticeship, through tech school, through different work experience, on the job training, rather than relying on those like typical hard and fast proxies.
How's the Heroes Make America program helping with that? I know that's been a big initiative for the
Yeah.
Manufacturing Institute. Are you seeing results? Tell our listeners a little more about what that program does and how it ties into doing the things you were just describing.
Yeah, so the Heroes Make America initiative really is our military to manufacturing strategy at the MI, and that supports both employers and service members in a variety of ways. It really is that bridge builder and connector at a national scale. So it's been really great to work for a program that has a national reach. And for a long time, what we've done is hiring events, virtual, both in person and virtual networking for our service members at various installations, really career awareness, allowing building relationships with employers to come in and speak with service members, transitioning service members and veterans on what it's like to work in XYZ type of role in manufacturing or the difference between different types of manufacturing so that they can get that awareness. And then for those individuals that have the aptitude, but maybe a gap in what they would need to be industrial maintenance technician or a certified production technician, we have our skill bridge programming. And that really allows those service members, once they're within their 180 days of military transition, to go, instead of going to work every day on site, they report to duty in the classroom and they're getting hands-on technical instruction from our community college partners to really learn what it takes and receive those certifications that they need to be successful in the civilian marketplace. And that's been a hugely successful program all across the country at many different installations. And that's been really great. But one of the long-standing challenges still remains, which when you are doing just classroom training, you're limited to seat time. You
Right.
only have so much seats available. And then we're also only able to serve a small group through SkillBridge because you have to get permission. You have to be right in the right window of time for your military transition. And honestly, of the 200,000 that are getting out every year, the percentage of those that are actually able to get the time and complete SkillBridge is limited. But we know that so many of our servicemen and women are very much qualified and capable to get into manufacturing. And so to help really solve that and to build better awareness, and also just to make their existing military skills more visible, because that's a big gap that we see, is that they're constantly coming out and being told, you know what, thank you for your service, but like you still need more training. You're not ready to hire you yet. And that's a lot of the message that service members receive when they're constantly told to go back to school, to go through this training, to go do this and that, because we're not really acknowledging and adequately translating their military skills and experience in a way that makes any sense to a civilian employer. And so we created, in partnership with an organization called SOLID, which is Solutions for Information Design. They were our data analysis gurus because they work deeply with the military community already and the DoD. And so they were a natural partner for us. There has to be a way where we can make military training skills more visible and align that to careers in manufacturing, the foundational skills needed in manufacturing. And so we set through this process a couple of years ago to really evaluate how many military occupations closely align to those foundational skills in maintenance, quality, safety, leadership, logistics, because we wanted to, one, give a little bit of standardization to military skill translation and give tools to our manufacturers that de-risked and took the guesswork out of that hiring process. So when they were evaluating a resume, they had a signal that said, you know what, they are already aligned. They already have the foundational skills needed to launch a career in manufacturing. And so we developed a series of manufacturing readiness badges that signaled those skills for maintenance, quality, safety. And that has been incredible because it's a tool for employers to really understand these are the skills that you're bringing to the table from your military training, let alone, it doesn't even take into consideration all of your years of work experience. This is the millions of dollars that DoD spent already training you, and this is how it aligns to what I need on my manufacturing floor. It's also a great tool for service members because, again, it's just bringing all of their military training to the forefront and giving them a signal that says what you did matters here. This is the bundle of skills you have, and this is how it aligns to maintenance. This is how it aligns to safety that we need in manufacturing. And so it's been a really helpful job search tool for them because they're better able to communicate how their military skills and training do align. And it gives them civilian language that they can use in their resumes during their interviews. So when someone asks you, tell me about a time when you had to clean and safe work environment, they can pull back into that civilian language from their badges and support that. And so we went from pilot to full-fledged program this past year. And we had
that's fast.
Yeah, we have issued almost just shy of 10,000 badges, and we have a series of 19 badges now. We started out just 8, but we've expanded that to 20. And so we've been able to serve over 2,000 individual service members that have been able to go create accounts and claim those badges. And so it's been great because we're better able to provide support to service members just outside of SkillBridge because we know that we couldn't serve them all through that advanced training. And this is a way to say, here's the foundational skills you have. If you want to go and upskill, if this is the right fit for you, train into industrial maintenance, then into our class here. But at least they're bringing their military training to the forefront. And then they have the knowledge of, okay, this is where I can upskill. This is the training program that makes sense for me. But it's validating their military experience in a way that's never been done before and adds some standardization to how we translate skills, which has been needed since the beginning of time. So I'm really excited for the potential that this has. Obviously, at the Manufacturing Institute, we're focusing on manufacturing and that supply chain.
Sure.
But this process could be done in any industry, care, IT.
Yes.
And so it has a lot of scaling that could be done.
That's really exciting. And I can see the excitement on your face too. The fact that you've been able to scale this, what, in a year? 8 badges to 20? Like 20,000 vets like impacted? That's great.
Yeah, haven't done that alone. But it's a way for us to build partnerships and relationships that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do without it. And so we're better able to support the National Guard and Reserve by getting those individuals badged. And then they have an opportunity to maybe start building a career in manufacturing that they would have never thought of. And so it really is a conversation starter. It's an awareness piece that really allows individuals to know that you belong here and you can build a career here. Here are the skills that you already have that give you a leg up. Now, if you want to go back into an apprenticeship, if you want to go back to technical school, if you want to go through a short-term training like our Skill Bridge, great. But it gives them more knowledge and more power to say, these are the skills that I have. This is what I'm already bringing to the table. And here's what I want to go do next. And so we don't have any seat limitations or timing limitations to a program like this. So we can serve many more than we've been able to in the past.
Well, there's so many soft skills that come along with not only military training, but experience. Every client we work with has the same complaint. Workers today, they don't want to show up on time. They don't want to work hard when they're here. If you don't take them through every step of the process, they'll just ignore it. Where in the military, there's so many soft skills that are transferable about punctuality, precision, following directions, following safety protocols. So problem solving.
A huge one.
Problem solving.
Huge one.
Under pressure problem solving. But
Yes.
to your point, I think you really bring up a good point that you almost have this perfect storm of a lack of understanding and experience on the employer side of how do these things translate and all of the acronyms and specialty roles and equipment and training. And then on the worker side, the applicant side, the veterans have a difficult time translating what they did into civilian language.
Yeah.
So you have this massive, it's a failure. We have a failure to communicate.
Yeah, we leave so much opportunity and skills on the table. And one of the statistics that I always like to share is veteran unemployment is honestly at an all-time low, but veteran underemployment remains at an all-time high. It's 33% higher than their civilian counterparts.
Wow.
And that's because in the application process, we never ask for their military training records. And they're honestly told not to put it on there because half the time the course titles make no sense and they don't say a whole lot. And you're only getting a very small window and picture of what they know and can do. And the badge program that we have really brings all of that to the forefront in a signal that's in a badge, that's machine readable, that employers can trust because it's been endorsed by the Manufacturing Institute. We were a part of that analysis. We endorsed it by industry because we know that these are the skills reflective of the foundational competencies needed in manufacturing, and we stand behind that. It's a trusted skill signal that they can then use that eases the pressure on employers in the hiring process, because when you're hiring, it's because you're growing, it's because you have vacancies and you need to fill them quickly. And you don't always have the time to go to Google and try to translate or get a committee together that does have military experience to try to decipher these 10 resumes that you got. And what often happens is they get put in the no pile. That first initial swipe, they get put in the no pile or the maybe pile. And when you have 30 other qualified applicants, you're not going to get to the other piles. And so it really provides an opportunity for those service members to be seen as qualified and to get hired faster, but to also be put into roles that are more commensurate with their full background because their training is now visible where it wasn't previously.
One question I have for you.
Okay.
I have many questions, but I feel like this is the elephant in the
for it.
room. Good. I feel like this is the elephant in the room when it comes to just in general what I'm hearing, especially going back to the Workforce Summit, training. We have so many people like talking about how they've invested so much in their Center for Excellence, but the problem that we're seeing is, especially for like sub 20 an hour entry level roles, these folks are, yes, they're being hired, but they're not staying. These folks are hiring 30, 40 people and only 6 end up really lasting a week. So I'm curious from your lens and perspective, especially because I know you're a data nerd. Like, obviously there's some challenges, but also what are some solutions?
Yeah, I wish I had one solution for that.
Okay. It's complex.
It's complex, and if it wasn't, we would have solved it already.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's really thinking about your talent management strategy, the whole spectrum,
Okay.
and really rethinking are the areas that we can reduce cost, reduce friction, reduce time, so that we can continue to reinvest in our workforce, whether that is in additional training, it's in wages, it's things like that. And when we have more efficient and effective recruitment processes, we have the right kinds of signals that are allowing us to better understand skills, and we're better able to make the right placements the first time into roles that make sense and they have a career pathway trajectory that aligns with their overall goals. Then we see numbers, especially those retention numbers, improve significantly. And there isn't one way to just fix it. It's really a holistic need, and something that you have to go back and audit, because there's always tweaks. If your time to hire is 90 days, 120 days, how do you reduce that to 30? And how do you reduce some of the costs associated with that? Same with training. Are we paying for training that maybe we could equip in-house and then offset some of that cost? Or how do we better invest into our training institutions so that we're getting what we need and we're better able to make skills visible so we can put them in the right place? Because a lot of turnover happens because individuals aren't in the right place. They're not in the right job. They're not, either they didn't have the skills for that job in the first place and they were setting themselves up to fail, or they are overqualified because their true skills weren't adequately evaluated from the beginning and they were put into a role that didn't align with everything they could do, and they got bored, and or they didn't see a career pathway. And so
Sure.
the reason that someone leaves is so multifaceted. It's never the same thing. A lot of that too is take a look at leadership, your frontline leadership. Are there investments that you need to make in training your frontline leadership? Because very often folks don't quit a job, they quit their manager. And so if
so true.
it's again so multifaceted, it goes back to what are the skills needed for those roles, especially in your leaders? What are the skills that maybe folks currently have, and where are the gaps, and how do you mitigate that gap? And that then helps support your hiring, your advancement, and your retention, which is easier said than done.
I know. Ooh, that's a laundry list of stuff.
But it's worth it, because human capital is the biggest and best investment that you'll ever make as an employer. And it's worth it, but it needs an audit regularly, especially as you grow, as skills evolve, and you hire the whole person, not just the 8 hours, 9 hours that you have them at work. You're hiring that whole person.
That's
and
a really
so
good
really
point.
getting to know your workforce, getting to know what their challenges might be and how you as an employer might be able to help support that, whether that's childcare challenges. Maybe the time that the shift is starting is also right when school starts. And so getting to work on time is a challenge, right? What would it look like to shift that back 15, 20 minutes, right? So there's just things that looking at your workforce as whole people, not just the 8 or 9 hours you have them in a day, makes a world of a difference as well.
That's such a good point, because
That's true for every industry and every employer,
Yes.
not just manufacturing.
I was going to say,
100%. 100%.
but especially within manufacturing, one of the things we run into on a regular basis is that challenge you just described, which is the frontline management workforce more often than not are in that position because they were good at the tactical level of that job. And they did it for 15 to 20 years and they were promoted up. And we see this across every industry. Same things happen in sales, where you take your best salesperson, you make them a manager, and they're awful at it because they never had management training. And that is a critical piece that we see, because so often they're coming at it from their own perspective, which we all do. It's natural, it's human. And so many of them come at it from, back in my day, we were glad just to have the job. And
Back in my-
make,
They also walked uphill in the snow both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How many times have I
exactly.
heard that?
A lot.
And now they're faced with a workforce that literally weren't raised with those same skill sets or pursuit of the same goals. For them, it was, I got this job so that I can make an hourly wage and get benefits and work my way up and get married, buy a home, have kids, and retire one day. And the entire new workforce is literally, how do I just make it to Friday? And I don't want my job to be my entire life for the next 40 years. So what's in it for me? And it feels like they're on two different planets. What are
Yeah.
you seeing that same thing?
Yeah, I think you have to look at different generations, what was happening in the world, and what were those big inflection points that really changed the way we looked at life
Yep.
fundamentally. Millennials, as a proud millennial,
Uh,
like we were formed and shaped by 9/11,
mhm.
and many of us were in junior high school when that happened. So many guys that I graduated with, their first after high school, they went off to war in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Many of the guys that I have worked with over the years, that was their story. And then for those of us that didn't, we went on to college because that's what we were told we were supposed to do. And then when we graduated, the recession hit, and people with 10 plus years of experience and degrees were getting laid off left and right. And so it changes the way you look at work and you look at life, and that balance that you try to strike. Gen Z is no different. While we're different generations, we have different ways of looking at the world. They were watching us go through it. They were little sisters or little brothers at the time, and they saw the struggle and the promises that were not necessarily there on the back end. And so that informed their worldview of how they, and the types of relationship that they wanted to have with life and work, education, and balance. And so there's no solution and answer to that other than acknowledge that we're different.
Yes.
Acknowledge that we're coming to the table with different goals, different mindsets, different perspectives, different needs. And we all need supported. We all need to build skills. And that's more true today than it has ever been. We have more information and training readily available to us through the internet than any other time before. And that is great, but it's also tough because we are not meant to process the amount of information at our fingertips at all times. And it leads to burnout. It leads a lot of other challenges. And so we have to acknowledge that. We have to see people, meet them where they're at, and build a plan around them to be successful. And I see that a lot in frontline leaders and supervisors. Yes, innately, you took the best one or two that were great at what they were doing and made them a manager, made them a leader. And maybe they wanted that, maybe they didn't. Maybe they were
Mm-hmm.
ready for it, maybe they weren't, but you needed one. But what kind of training and support did they get to do that? And what kind of continued support do they get? What's the culture around that? And can they ask for help? Do they have a mentor, or are they out there on their own? This is not like a brag. I was a VP twice before 35. And it just happened to be the case because I got promoted into a role that never existed, and they needed a title, and there it was. And I had a ton of responsibility and no training, no leadership training, no nothing. And I had a team. And I think if you were to, I did my very best. I tried to be the best leader I could. I Googled, I read, I did a lot of things on my own.
Yep.
And there was some rocky. If you ask some of my first employees, they're like, oh yeah, she was in way over her head. But I figured it out. But now I use that experience to say, one, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have a mentor. It's okay to go to your boss and say, I need help. I am struggling with X, Y, and Z without fear of reprisal, without fear of being fired or demoted. But that's the kind of culture that you have to create where folks can come and say, I need help. And that's something that I think Gen Z and soon to be Gen Alpha in the workforce is going to do a lot better than millennials did. They know how to ask for help. And that's the biggest difference I think I've seen between the two.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And I think it's so important that we put ourselves in the shoes of today's workers. I think that's great advice. As we wrap up here, you're doing a lot of wonderful things. What are you most excited about?
I think I'm most excited to continue expanding our manufacturing readiness badging
Okay.
and really make military skills more visible, bringing that training to the forefront, exploring what else could and should we make visible, how can these be better, more effectively integrated within hiring technology systems that employers are already using? How do we serve more employers and more service members than maybe we would have ever been able to do through our traditional programs? I'm excited to see how we can build relationships and strategic partnerships with other organizations that are also working and serving veterans, because this is just another tool to help support. It's not going to be the one thing that gets you the job, because there's never just one thing that gets you a job.
For sure.
But it's building industry awareness. And that's one of the challenges that have really plagued the manufacturing industry, is that exposure, that awareness, that knowledge of, hey, we're here. Because manufacturing buildings, for the most part, they're not on the main road. They don't have windows and lobbies where you can come in and chit chat. It's
Exactly.
not the place you go and drink coffee. And so what happens in there is largely unseen. And
Yes.
so how we build better awareness, better visibility for the industry, and then help answer the question of, gosh, how does what I did in the military matter? Will I be seen as qualified? What skills do I have that translate well to an industry? We're helping answer that question. And it's not perfect. We would love to continue expanding that analysis. Right now, our badges are at the foundational level. You'd love to maybe go up into more advanced technical skills, intermediate technical skills.
Yeah.
But it's a start and potential. And it's our way of saying, this is how we want to support industry, by taking the guesswork out of trying to hire from the military community, because that has always been a challenge. And then also working with our service members to say, you belong here, you are qualified, what you did does matter, we value it, and here's how we're signaling that, and here's how we're going to help you signal that to employers. And so I'm excited to keep growing it. We have some fun, cool things on the horizon for 2026, so stay tuned.
Yes.
We'll have to have you back on to talk about that.
I'm excited. And our military community is always going to be near and dear to my heart. And if I can help support at scale more individuals, and never having to ask the question of, will I be seen as skilled? Will I have value when I hang up this uniform? I always want that answer to be yes. I never want someone to have to question if what they did matters to us, because it does, both in the workplace and what they've already sacrificed. And so I see the badges as a way to really prove that.
Can't think of a better note to end on. So
Yes.
how do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about the program, or just connect with you directly?
Yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And then for our full Heroes Make America initiative that covers all of our incredible hiring events and opportunities to connect with our Skill Bridge classes, do company tours, as well as get to know our manufacturing readiness badges, you can go to the Manufacturing Institute's website and click on Veterans, and we have our Heroes Make America. And then there's lots of really great hyperlinks on that page that'll get you to wherever you need to go. And I'm on there somewhere under manufacturing readiness.
Somewhere.
Or my name is incredibly unique, and so if you just look me up on LinkedIn, you can find me.
We'll put it in the show notes for you.
Yeah, put it in the show notes.
Put it in
My
the
name.
That's right.
We got you. Well, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.